Another day is here, and you're ready for it. What to wear? Check. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Check. Planning for what's next and how to save for it? That's where Bank of America can help. For your financial to-dos, Bank of America has experts ready to help get you closer to your goals. Get started at one of our local financial centers or 24/7 in our mobile banking app. Find a location near you at bankofamerica.com/talktous. What would you like the power to do? Mobile banking requires downloading the app and is only available for select devices. Message and data rates may apply. Bank of America N.A., member FDIC.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to Pro Plus on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick and I'm joined today by Jamie Kemp, who is an editor at Opta and one half of the brilliant Pausa podcast, which he hosts with Robbie Dunn. Jamie, you are used to carrying an Irishman through podcasts, so I'm going to ask you to do the same again today. Martin Zubimendi, it does look like it's all systems go and that he will be departing La Liga to come to Liverpool. What are your thoughts on just this deal? Are you surprised that it's come together this quickly? Because he's been linked with a lot of moves and always seemed to turn them down, and this one kind of came out of nowhere and now it looks like it might happen.
Yeah, I'm very surprised, to be honest. Like you said, there's been a lot of teams that have had interest in him in recent years, but the indication has always been that he was happy in San Sebastian. All of his interviews that he does, the quotes he gives, never sounded like a player who was thinking about leaving. So for this just to come out of the blue yesterday is really surprising to me. But yeah, I guess we can get into why Liverpool have been the ones that have been, we think have been the ones that have been able to attract him.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like we've seen his name linked to Barcelona, to Bayern Munich, to Manchester United, to Arsenal, to others. And the line always was like, he doesn't want to leave San Sebastian. He's very happy there. He may well spend his whole career there. But obviously, Liverpool have been, it looks like it, they've been successful in their pitch to him. The reporting from both Spanish outlets and English outlets is that Real Sociedad now expect him to leave. So what do you think it is that's drawn him to Liverpool? Because, I mean, I think the style of football would certainly be one thing. I think how Arne Slot wants Liverpool to play, you can see Zubimendi just fitting in perfectly, especially in that first phase build-up. But what else do you think it might be? Because Liverpool as a city doesn't have the glamour of London. It doesn't have the beaches of Barcelona. It doesn't have, what San Sebastian offers them, which is that familiarity. But it does offer some good history with Spanish players. Xabi Alonso was very happy there. Torres was happy there until he wasn't. Reina was happy there. Thiago spoke glowingly about living in the city and how much he enjoyed it. And what do you think it might be?
Yeah, I never really expected him to leave Real Sociedad and go to a different La Liga club. I just think that was never in his mind. He didn't want to bring that upon his hometown club. I didn't see him going to somewhere like Barcelona for that reason. But just focusing on the Premier League clubs, I thought Arsenal would be a possibility given the Arteta links, Real Sociedad. But to me, Liverpool would be different for the fact that I think there's a real mystique around Liverpool and especially Anfield within Spain. Spanish players, just the feeling I get from over there. Just as a very random example, but there's a team, Rayo Vallecano, who play in Madrid, who, when they're doing well, they have an ironic chant where they sing, essentially, next year we'll be playing against Liverpool. And I always found it notable that they mentioned Liverpool instead of anybody else. So
Yeah.
I think, I think just the chance to play for Liverpool, to play at Anfield, is kind of seen as like the peak of English football, which, English football has a lot of respect from Spain, for tradition and all those types of things.
Yeah, and I suppose for him, when we look at his specific career, it was really under Xabi Alonso in that B team at Real Sociedad that, he started to make real noise. And I do wonder if Alonso was, obviously somebody he looks up to, another Real Sociedad legend, started his career there, moved to Liverpool 20 years ago, would you believe? It may well be as well that he's gleaned some things from Alonso, and Alonso, it may well be that he's had the call from Liverpool and he's called Alonso and said, look, what do you think here? This is the offer I have. Is this a move that you think is good for me? And Xabi always talks, even, he's been gone from Liverpool for 14 years, and yet he still calls Liverpool one of his homes and talks about the club and with a reverence that is, quite rare. And as you say, there is a mystique around Liverpool with a lot of Spanish fans and a lot of Spanish clubs, and that probably does buy into it, that Anfield roar, those Champions League nights that so many Spanish players will have grown up watching as well, and hearing about the famous nights at Anfield, seeing what Liverpool did to Barcelona a few years ago at Anfield. These type of things may well have created a picture in Zubimendi's mind where he thought, well, if I do go to England, that's what I want. I want that, rather than, like you said, the Arsenal thing. It's pretty obvious Arteta was, really keen to get him in, and he's another player who was at Real Sociedad, has that Spanish connection, obviously. But Liverpool maybe is just something that formed in Zubimendi's mind over a couple of years, rather than just that individual connection he might have with Arteta.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Alonso element is pretty big as well, because I've read quite a few interviews from Zubimendi, and the Alonso relationship he has, the fact that he played under him when he was just coming through, and he was the last coach he played under before he became, he made the step up to the first team. I think that there's a big attraction in being able to follow in the footsteps of Alonso specifically, because he said himself, Alonso is his idol. They have a good relationship. He said even when he went up to the first team, when they'd pass each other at the training ground, they'd always stop, and Alonso would talk to him about his game. And he credits Alonso as well for developing his game, specifically in terms of the build-up, how to read the game, how to read the different types of pressure. So I think, just that, being able to so directly follow in the footsteps of Alonso, I don't think is an insignificant part of all this by any means.
So let's start with Alonso. So there is an expectation from some fans that haven't seen much of Zubimendi that what they're buying is another Alonso, but he's not the same type of player. Now, about a year and a half ago, maybe almost 2 years ago, you wrote an immense piece, which is the first time I became aware of your work, on Martin Zubimendi, which I see you've retweeted today. Your Twitter handle is at Jamie M. Kemp for people that want to go and follow. But you've retweeted this piece you wrote a couple of years ago. Martin Zubimendi, the Real Sociedad midfielder, finding stardom in simplicity. And it's rare that a title sums a player up, but that does sum him up. What makes him so special is that decision-making, the high IQ, the willingness to play the simple pass, because most often the simple pass is the right pass, rather than look to get overly expansive and try and do things that are not in the flow of the game. So break us down what your view on Zubimendi, the footballer, is.
Yeah, I think he's, even though I work for Opta and I work with numbers a lot, I think he's one of those players that the numbers never really do justice. And I think even if you only watch him in small spurts, say 3 to 5 games, he might go under the radar a little bit. But if you watch him over 38 games over the course of a season, you can't be anything but impressed with his performances, his consistency, the balance to his game. And Alonso himself, when he's speaking about Zubimendi's game, I think summed it up really well as well. He said that Zubimendi is one of those players that he's always thinking about his teammates more than himself. So he's not in it for, adding these eye-catching actions to his individual compilation. He's always thinking about how best he can service the team, whether that's with the ball or without the ball. And yeah, he's not somebody who's going to come to the Premier League. If he does come, and he's going to, you're going to log onto Twitter and there's going to be all these amazing compilations of, spraying the ball to all corners of Anfield. You're just going to get real dependable decision-making, good sound fundamentals, doing all the basics to a consistent level. And I think he's just one of those players that, as a manager, he'd give me a lot of peace of mind, because I wouldn't worry about him in any aspect of the game.
This is the thing. And it's only a month or so ago that in one of the biggest games in world football, the European Championship final, Rodri, who I think everybody would agree is the best defensive midfield player in the world, goes off injured at half-time. And you can go back and look at the tweets from England fans who were, they thought, we've won this now. Rodri's gone. We're winning this. And you look at the Spanish response, which was like, we've got Zubimendi coming on. We're going to be absolutely fine here. Nobody had any doubt in his ability to step in and just manage that game. And that's probably what he's best at, is kind of managing games, being that tempo setter, keeping everything moving in the right direction, making smart decisions, and always keeping a very level head. The thing I love about him is his demeanor doesn't seem to change a whole lot, regardless of what the game state is. He doesn't feel like he ever gets hurried up, like he starts to panic, like he starts to play outside the system. I think obviously credit goes to those that have coached him, both at academy level and obviously he's only had the one manager at senior level, but also some of the players that he's played with over the years that he's clearly gleaned a lot from, including David Silva, who he had a couple of wonderful years playing alongside. He just has this wonderful demeanour that I think is exactly what Liverpool need and will fit really well with Alexis McAllister, who I think is of the same kind of mindset.
Yeah, it's you can never really be 100% on a transfer working out, but you mentioned the mindset, the temperament, that looking at that from Zubimendi's perspective would give me a lot of confidence that this would be a transfer that works out, because he's just a very intelligent player. There's a nice interview with that he did with Sid Lowe in The Guardian, and you can tell just from reading that, the way that he talks about studying the opponent. I've seen in other interviews where he's talking about when he's at home, he's got football on the TV all the time. He has to tell himself off for watching so much football. So I think he's a coach's dream, I think is probably the best way to describe him, instead of being a dream of a player in compilation sense of stacking up all these wonderful actions during a game. He's going to be another mini coach on the pitch, I would say.
Exactly. And I think that's something that is quite rare. We hear it said a lot, but I don't think it happens quite as often as people like to make out. I don't think certain players that are talked about in that regard really fit that bill. But with him, it really does seem like, you know, when his manager wants something done, it's him he talks to. The instructions go through Zubimendi and then sort of filter out through the rest of the team. And I think that's going to be hugely beneficial for Liverpool as well, because, you know, over the last few years, they've lost some of the leaders in the group, the older players, the more experienced players. And look, he's still a young player at 25. He'll turn 26, I think, in February. But he does have a very wise head and he does play beyond his years. And, you know, you look at the experience he's got now. It's 4 full seasons in the Real Sociedad team. And it's telling that they've never finished below 6th. They've never conceded more than 40 goals, whereas the 4 seasons before that, they'd never finished above 6th. And they'd always conceded 46 or more goals. He has brought real stability to that team, which is definitely something they've been lacking.
Yeah, exactly. They've been so competitive pretty much from the entire time he's been in the first team setup. Across those 4 seasons, only Real Madrid and Barcelona have kept more clean sheets than Real Sociedad in La Liga. So he's been right in the middle of what's been an incredibly strong defensive structure, very balanced team, always difficult to beat. And the demands at Real Sociedad, just for people who don't really follow La Liga and they're not that familiar with them, it's an incredibly, you know, demanding place to play, almost brutal, I would say, because people always talk about managers asking a lot in terms of aggression and intensity, but Imanol Alguacil he's almost in a league of his own in La Liga in that respect, because, you know, I've seen Zubimendi talk about the fact that nobody gets, you know, an earful from the manager more than him, or has done over these last 4 years, and that's been with him being probably one of the most consistent players of those past 4 seasons. So they never rest on their laurels. They're always, you know, competing. The training sessions are notoriously, you know, competitive. They train as if they're playing matches. So he's developed within a very demanding atmosphere, and along with that, he's been exposed to different competitions, different levels of the game. You know, coming on in the Euros final. So along with just having a very demanding development as an individual, he's gone up the levels of competition as well, and never really had any problems adapting.
This episode is brought to you by our good friends at NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. I'm sure by now you've all gotten back into your Sunday routines, but they could be even better. With NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get the most live NFL games all in one place, every game, every Sunday. And you can even watch up to 4 different games at once with multi-view, one of my favorite inventions of this decade. It's exactly what you need to catch all the action. Make your Sundays more magical. And also, YouTube TV is great. I got it this year. It's awesome. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
No, exactly. He has just stepped up very seamlessly through the different levels. And it's interesting, you mentioned the manager kind of giving him the earful most often. And you often hear certain managers talk about how they know what players can take. They know what level of coaching they can take. They know how hard they can push players. The fact that the manager feels he can push this guy this hard is probably the biggest sign of respect between manager and player, that when he needs to blow off steam, he knows he can do it towards Zubimendi because he'll just take it. He's not going to take it personally. There's going to be no negative reaction. It does speak really well to the character of the player. And, you know, obviously with La Real over the last couple of years, like we're seeing a new level of consistency that we hadn't seen from them season after season after season in a long time. Like, they've had very good teams over the last 30 years or so, but this is the first time they've been kind of a consistent top four contender. They've obviously won some silverware in recent years, and Zubimendi played a big part in that final against Athletic Bilbao, which was a year delayed. He may not have played in it had it happened when it was meant to happen, but he did play a big part as they beat Athletic Bilbao to win the Copa del Rey of 2020, but in 2021. And he was excellent in that final. He'll join a Liverpool team that's obviously looking to advance and get back into real title contention. What do you think he brings to the team? Because there's been a certain lack in midfield for a few years now, when Fabinho declined, and obviously the failure last summer to get either Caicedo or Lavia across the line. There's some statistical profiling that there's similarities between Zubimendi and Caicedo, even though you wouldn't necessarily look at them and think, oh, well, they do the same things. They do a lot of the similar things, which should lean into a Zubimendi McAllister double pivot. But what do you think he can really bring to this team?
I would say balance above all, but really consistent balance as to where, we've seen in the Premier League, especially in the title race these last few seasons, especially with respect to Arteta, there's a lot of emphasis on balance, on being really strong defensively and dependable as the foundation for picking up masses of points. I think Zubimendi is one of the best players out there that in terms of reliable targets for Liverpool that would help them make a big step towards achieving that. Defensive midfielders at the very top level, there aren't many out there. Underneath Rodri, there's not many that close to him or close to the level of being, a definitive starter for a team like Liverpool. So I think part of it is also they know that a player like Zubimendi is quite a rare breed in the modern game. So making this huge effort to go get him now, after so many teams have been rebuffed, I think they feel like they've got a player at a good age who has, a very good chance of just slotting into this 11 and making Arne Slot's life easier in terms of finding the crucial balance for this team and trying to compete, at the top end of the Premier League.
That's exactly it. I mean, this is a big season for Arne Slot. He's replacing Jurgen Klopp. There's going to be pressure because it's Liverpool, because of who you're replacing. And having someone like Zubimendi, who's obviously a very high IQ player, should make any and all transition for not just the manager, but for the players as well, a lot easier, because he is the type of player who takes pressure off others. He's happy to receive the ball in any and all situations, and he's incredibly press resistant. He's like we talked about earlier, like with your article, the simplicity of what he does a lot of other players thinking for them, and that can make their lives a lot easier. From a defensive side, so obviously on the ball, there's no question about him. We know he's going to be really good on the ball. From a defensive side, would you have any concerns? Because I have some about Zubimendi and McAllister as a double pivot off the ball. Now, obviously, at Real Sociedad, he's played mostly in a 3. He'll be moving into a double pivot at Liverpool. It's something he has done, obviously, quite a bit in his career. But him and McAllister, there's not a lot of dynamism between the two of them. But can intelligence make up for that?
For me, I don't know if I'm in the minority, but I've watched him pretty much every week for the past 4 seasons since he's come into the team. And if I were to determine where he's at on the scale of defensive quality versus in possession quality, I think for the moment I'd still skew a little bit towards defensive quality. I think that's been his biggest improvement over these last 2 or 3 seasons. Real Sociedad are a super aggressive pressing team. They were, even in the Champions League last season, their approach did not change whatsoever, and that invites a lot of man-to-man, marking duties, being aggressive high up the pitch, very physical. I think his progression within that context has been pretty unbelievable these last few seasons. The thing is, the Premier League is faster than La Liga. I watch both leagues, and the 2 leagues I watch the most. There's a big difference in play there. But I think Zubimendi has been very, very good within a team who are super aggressive without the ball, always trying to be on the front foot, snapping at heels. He's held up remarkably well in that environment. So I think beyond just the differences between La Liga and Premier League, it will take some adaptation. I remember before Real Sociedad played Man United in the Europa League a couple of seasons ago, I think it was now. Zubimendi did
2022, I think.
Yeah, Zubimendi did an interview, and they were asking him about the opposition. And as somebody who watches a lot of football, by the sounds of it, he was talking about Man United as if he'd watched every game they played that season, and he was talking about the differences between English football. And he said what stood out to him was just the speed of play, the way the ball goes from end to end quicker than it does in La Liga. So I think he's aware of things like that, the differences that will be present moving to the Premier League. But the way he's, the way he's improved and become such a reliable defensive player at Real Sociedad, I think bodes well for him potentially taking the next step and adapting to whatever it is Slot will ask of him.
Yeah, and I mean, like you say, the speed of play is quicker, but he's the type of player I think that should adapt to it quite well. And we've seen a number of Spanish players come over, including Rodri. Obviously, you came over from, he'd had the season of Villarreal where he really announced himself to everybody, goes back to Atletico Madrid where he'd been as a youngster, and Pep Guardiola obviously fell in love with him that year watching him. But he comes from a Simeone team, which is obviously uber compact, playing in La Liga, to the Premier League, and looked like he'd been there for 10 years straight away, never had any issues. And Rodri's not someone you'd think of as being fleet of foot, but he's able to control a game and slow it down to his own tempo, which I think Zubimendi can do as well. And it's funny, you mentioned, like, you look at, there's kind of Rodri and then there's everybody else. And I was working through this yesterday. I was trying to think, well, who would I say after Rodri? Like, what's the list? And I think Rodri, I probably lean Tchouaméni number 2. And then after that, I think Zubimendi's in a small group with the likes of Bruno Guimaraes and 1 or 2 others that would sit in that kind of next group, but very close to Tchouaméni. Now, Rodri's obviously separated himself from the field, but he's also, part of that is also the team he plays in and what they've won. I think a lot of people always have trouble separating individual player from team success. There's no doubting Rodri's brilliance, but again, we saw it in the European Championship final that Zubimendi came on and there was no drop-off at all. Like, there was no hiccup in what Spain were doing from Rodri going off to Zubimendi coming on. I think it does speak to his level of being able to play among any group of players and be a standout performer.
Yeah, for sure. And just having mentioned guys like Tchouaméni, competitors in his field for the top defensive midfielders, what I would say on Zubimendi in respect to that, out of possession stuff, any doubts whether it's a little bit light in midfield. I think Zubimendi, what you see from him is a real, there are not many positional errors that he seems to make across the season. I could probably, not to exaggerate, but I could probably count on one hand the amount of times where I've thought Zubimendi is wildly out of position there. Whereas somebody like Tchouaméni, he has a higher ceiling as a defensive midfielder. He's much more gifted athletically, but I see positional errors from him that I don't see in somebody like Zubimendi. I don't know whether that's because Tchouaméni feels like he's got more tools to bail himself out or whatever it is, but I think the fundamentals of Zubimendi in terms of understanding his position, just an intelligence of what's going on around him, that's a big factor in what will make up him, what I think will make him holding up very well on the defensive end.
Yeah, I mean, Tchouaméni does definitely gamble a lot more, and like you say, it's probably because he backs himself physically. He's quite the athlete, whereas Zubimendi, what I really like about him is he knows what he can and can't do, and I don't think a lot of players have that real awareness. I think there's quite a few that we see. I think Declan Rice is one who at times will overly back his own athleticism and charge out of position to try and do something and then get caught. With Zubimendi, you don't see that very often. Like you say, it's rare that you watch a passage of play and think, oh, he's made a positional error there. Like that ability to read the game and know I can't get to that ball, so there's no point in me trying to get to that ball. I'll stay here and I'll impact the next phase, or I'll make this next move. So when he plays that pass, I'm going to cut that one out. That type of thing, I think, will lend itself really well to the Premier League and should mitigate most potential issues in midfield. Jamie, I'm going to thank you for your time. Is there anything else you wanted to just mention about the player before I let you go?
That's an interesting one. I don't know. I mean, I've been writing about him for a long time, so I'm a big fan of him. I'm optimistic about the move. I'm sad to see him leave La Liga, but I will be making a big effort to watch Liverpool matches if it goes through. I've just really enjoyed seeing his development over these last 4 seasons. I think he's one of very few players in La Liga who I can point to that every season he comes back, he's either a better player from the beginning or there's clear development across, the season as it plays out, whether it's physical, on the ball, competition, concentration levels, so many things that I feel like have grown from season 1 to season 4. And now I think is probably a good time for him to make the big move, because I feel like he's probably going to come towards a bit of a ceiling at Real Sociedad in terms of his development. It's not going to be, complete straight line for season after season at Real Sociedad. I think the new environment, Premier League, Liverpool, is going to be potentially, let's hope it works out, is what will take him closer to Rodri. Whether he can ever get, to that level is, of course, a different matter, but I think that's what will, make up some of the distance in between.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. At Real Sociedad, they're not guaranteed Champions League football every year. They've had it once in the last 4 years. They're a regular Europa League team, obviously, but he wants to test himself at the very highest level. I think that's probably part of the appeal of moving now. There is also that sort of thing you see with certain players where they don't make the move at the right time. They stay a year or two too long, and then when they do move on, they have a tougher time adapting. So like you, I think it is the right time at 25 now. I don't think anybody could doubt his commitment to Real Sociedad, the service he's given them. I think he's there since he's 11 or 12 years of age. He's obviously from San Sebastian. He adores the club, and it would be no surprise if after 5 or 6 years at Liverpool, he was to return back there and see out his career. I would actually probably put money on that being what he does. But I think he has to back himself. And I think that's a big part of this, is backing himself to make this move, experience Anfield in its full glory, get those Champions League reps under his belt. And like you say, he may not become as good as Rodri, but at least he has that to aim for. Like, that's the kind of level I want to get to. And if it works out, then Liverpool get what will be a bargain at 51 million or whatever they end up paying, whether they agree a fee that's installments or they pay the buyout. I don't think anybody could claim it's an overpayment because, like you said, season after season, he's gotten better. The consistency is outrageously good. And I think there's still more to come. I still think he's got another level to get to.
Yeah, even you just saying it then, 51 million, it sounds on the low side to me.
In a world where Enzo Fernandez was 100 million, Moises Caicedo was 100 million, Declan Rice was 100 million, like, it doesn't seem like a fair deal for Real Sociedad to lose a player of this quality for that money.
No, absolutely. Yeah, Christ, what a deal that would be if if things go as projected, as I expect them to for Zubimendi. And yeah, the initial feeling was sadness from seeing him leave his boy club, or as we expect him to do. But from talking about him this morning, the deal that Liverpool have managed to put together, from the sounds of it, which I have to keep saying, it just sounds remarkably promising for Liverpool and Arne Slot, who I think will sleep soundly knowing Zubimendi is on the way.
Yeah, I mean, that it is important to point out that nothing is official yet. There's still time for things to change, but all the reports are fairly promising at the moment. Gerard Romero, I think, did come out last night and say that it's not certain he might stay another year, but let's be honest, Gerard Romero was just Barcelona's version of Mark Goldbridge and shouldn't be taken seriously. Jamie, thank you so much for your time. Your Twitter handle is @JamieKemp. People can find your work at Opta. You're an editor, but you do also write with those pieces come up on Opta. Opta analyst, and obviously the La Pausa pod. What's the frequency of the La Pausa pod? How often is it that you can get Robbie to podcast? Because obviously Irish people don't like to work too hard.
It should be weekly as soon as the season starts. We'll have a season preview out early next week, so we'll be talking about all 20 teams in one way or another.
There we go. Thank you so much for your time today. Take care.
No worries. Cheers, Dave.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter @Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.